These files were never meant to be public, but someone reopened them. This is the Dark Bureau. A modest storefront stands across from a busy tram station in the subdued outskirts of a European city. Above its door, the sign reads Community Centre, carefully worded in the local language, its meaning unremarkable to most passers-by. Inside, families move quietly through familiar rituals, evening prayers murmured in unison, children's laughter mingling with the scent of warm bread, elders debating quietly in a side room. It's a soothing tableau, one of refuge, daily habit, and mutual trust. Layered behind these everyday acts, however, are paperwork and ledgers that hint at hidden complexity. Upon close review, the trail is oddly circuitous. Routine funding transfers originate from a registered charity in Hamburg, then leap across borders to flow into this community centre's coffers. That Hamburg charity, in turn, discloses its own funding as project support, wired directly from a cultural foundation headquartered in Tehran. The result is a seamless tapestry, one thread distinctly Iranian, the other woven tightly into Europe's urban fabric. The lines between religious charity, neighbourhood service, and foreign policy instrument are not merely blurred. They are mapped, logged, and institutionalised. What emerges across Europe is a quietly coordinated infrastructure, spanning dozens of small mosques and community hubs. Each appears autonomous, rooted locally by language, leadership, and social outreach. Yet beneath the surface, expert investigators identify recurring flows of money, visiting dignitaries, and nearly identical messaging strategies. To the outside observer, it is civic engagement, after-school tutoring, food drives, winter clothing for the elderly. But at another level, a level visible only through forensic scrutiny, a systematic campaign of influence takes shape, coordinated by Iranian state-linked organisations and delegated to trusted émigré managers. Here, public events comfortably invoke shared faith and tradition. But behind closed doors, private meetings set political agendas and implement subtle forms of discipline. This network does not stay confined to prayer halls. Cultural societies, non-profits, educational centres and youth clubs operate in a loosely affiliated web, their outreach echoing central guidance. This is not simply the tale of an isolated place of worship, nor a matter of one shocking investigation. Instead, it is the account of a complex managed system, a clandestine apparatus that blurs the boundary between soft power diplomacy and organic community development. When one host country's authorities open an investigation, another avoids involvement, citing respect for religious pluralism and freedom of assembly. When a figurehead imam is pressured to retire or moves on, so too does the bank account. Its signatories replaced overnight, sometimes in lockstep with changes in charitable registration. The mechanism flexes, adapts, and never fully stops. What may have begun as a single opaque funding transfer or a one-off cultural exchange metastasizes into a streamlined, continent-spanning means of broadcasting influence and adjusting the public narrative to favour Iran's priorities. The origins of the method are deliberately subtle. To begin, charities with Iranian links file extensive, apparently above-board documentation to register or support new mosques in mid-tier European cities, places with visible but politically quiet Muslim diaspora populations. The stated intention is always positive: community development, youth engagement, language assimilation support, interfaith programs designed to demonstrate integration. These initiatives are, in many instances, genuinely useful. Long-term immigrants find a place to celebrate holidays. Recently arrived families receive practical assistance. Local elders gain advocates for municipal services. The front-facing reality is accessible and non-confrontational. Yet the funding structure tells another story. Remittances are routed with unnerving regularity, safely nestled within non-profit shells, whose leadership interlocks with larger Iranian philanthropic bodies. Forensic financial analysts map these connections, cataloguing a labyrinth of shared board memberships and overlapping bylaws. The shell organisations complicate legal oversight, exploiting ambiguities in cross-border charitable law, a feature, not a bug, of the system's architecture. Structural motivations become clear upon deeper analysis. The priority is to anchor diaspora loyalty and maintain cultural cohesion, while quietly ensuring that the Iranian government's ideological narrative saturates local discussions. There's a defensive aspect, promoting the preservation of Iranian heritage, defending community members from marginalisation. But interlaced with that is a proactive agenda. Religious attachés posted to embassies act as informal auditors, attending Friday sermons, monitoring how closely local imams stick to approved scripts. Their mission: gently but persistently shape what is preached, especially on issues touching social justice, geopolitics, or Iranian national interests. If a leader shows too much independent thinking, training opportunities and financial incentives, and sometimes explicit pressure from visiting clerics, redirect the messaging. Conferences and workshops in Iran reinforce these strategies. Local volunteers and mosque staff are flown out for educational tours, returning with the same translated materials and guidance found in multiple cities, synchronizing the narratives that circulate organically in Friday lessons and social events. Meanwhile, guidance cascades through encrypted social media channels, accessible only to trusted insiders in the diaspora. Government circulars, delivered digitally or by diplomatic pouch, offer talking points keyed to electoral calendars or breaking news. Officially, these exchanges are described as cultural promotion or routine engagement necessary to support minority populations. Yet leaked archives of Iranian government directives, subsequently obtained by European intelligence agencies, tell a more meticulously orchestrated story. Priority number one is to subtly steer public opinion on issues like sanctions enforcement, anti-discrimination policies, and bilateral trade. When European elections loom, community leaders mobilise quiet get-out-the-vote efforts. Candidate endorsements are couched as civic engagement, but often reflect Tehran's preferences. The complexity of prosecuting cases or sanctioning organisations is daunting. Establishing intent, or even a clear legal violation, is vastly complicated by the system's layers of plausible deniability, liberal legal norms, and a default presumption of non-malfeasance, underpinned by commitments to religious freedom, guarantee years of effective cover for the network. By the late 2010s, the system matures and morphs in the face of growing scrutiny. Funding is no longer channeled only through traditional charitable foundations registered in Germany or France. Instead, a proliferation of digital and analogue intermediaries emerges. Anonymous donations routed via foreign bank accounts, legacy trusts established with complex inheritance arrangements, flows of cryptocurrency used to obscure origins and beneficiaries. Some houses of worship begin hosting off-the-books meetings attended by regional Iranian envoys. Trusted volunteers, usually with dual citizenship or long-standing ties to local law firms, help translate coordinated messaging into multiple EU languages. Those who prove loyal receive support, streamlined visa renewals, financing for property renovations, assistance with legal troubles. Nonconformists, by contrast, are systematically marginalised. At times, administrators overseeing a mosque or charity find themselves replaced overnight, sometimes at the urging of a visiting dignitary or after a quiet backroom meeting. The system's resilience and its capacity for regeneration depend on its ability to operate in the shadows of legality and jurisdictional ambiguity. Early investigative breakthroughs are triggered by enterprising journalism. In Germany, seasoned reporters uncover oddities in funding trails. Their Scandinavian counterparts reveal cross-border recipient lists and synchronise public events. Intensified requests for information among European intelligence services uncover diplomatic cables from senior Iranian clerics, explicitly directing local partners on how to mobilise diaspora opinion during migration crises, or to seed narratives hostile to Western sanctions regimes. Logistics companies, ostensibly legitimate, are implicated in the movement of both cash and informational material, leveraging normal shipping and commercial supply chains to shield financial transfers. When these findings are brought before local parliaments, political debates devolve rapidly. Accusations of religious profiling and xenophobia tangle with demands for greater security controls. Security and counterintelligence officers warn that effective surveillance requires a careful, rights-respecting approach, further complicating institutional responses. In the spring of 2018, this careful balance fractures. Austrian counter-terrorism officials, acting on tips from multiple European agencies, raid the office of a well-known Islamic charity in Vienna. They seize troves of documents, laptops, and encrypted drives that, once decrypted, offer meticulous blueprints of the region-wide influence network. Memos detail relationships spanning from Beirut to The Hague, anchored through shell companies and intermediate NGOs. Analysts tracing money flows identify at least €12 million in transfers over 5 years, each transaction crafted to hover just below the legal reporting threshold. Institutional responses escalate. Several EU states initiate asset freezes against named organisations and individuals. Others use diplomatic channels to quietly expel attachés and replace consular staff believed to be key liaisons. The exposed network contracts sharply. Shell companies are shuttered, suspicious bank accounts closed, but these measures do not uproot the system entirely. New intermediaries spring up in the Balkans and Central Europe. Affected mosques recast themselves as cultural education centres, while new non-profits register with minor changes in board composition. The network's playbook evolves. Form never vanishes, only the particulars shift. At this critical juncture, patterns of adaptation reveal deeper structural implications. Wherever the network comes under scrutiny, its branding and outreach become more cautious and less overt. Outreach flyers focus on language courses and interfaith dialogue, consciously avoiding controversial or politicised rhetoric. Nonetheless, the underlying system continues, now powered by novel technologies and new digital pathways. Secure messaging apps using end-to-end encryption shield communications among senior figures. Cryptocurrencies and anonymous online donations thwart conventional oversight. Some newly registered charities begin to list their directors as based in third-party jurisdictions beyond the EU's financial regulatory reach. Notably, political parties seeking greater support among new citizens find themselves courted by well-organised diaspora activists, who sometimes unintentionally amplify themes first articulated by Iranian-backed institutions. This seeding of narratives creates enduring feedback loops in local policy-making and public debate. For European civic and political leaders, this evolution triggers institutional anxiety and provokes legal uncertainty. On one hand, the sanctity of religious freedom and the right to association are non-negotiable pillars of European democratic order. On the other, the emergence of intricate, semi-visible foreign influence networks erodes the social contract, breeding mistrust and fueling speculation about disloyalty or subversion. Most congregants at these community centres are unaware of any covert agenda. For the majority, these spaces offer comfort, kinship, and a vital sense of belonging. But for a strategically selected cadre, these institutions are designed and maintained as nodes in a transnational system, a system engineered to preserve cultural identity and social cohesion while maximising a form of ongoing and low-cost leverage over European affairs. Where espionage once relied on individual deep cover agents, the contemporary network diffuses risk and obscures responsibility, operating at a street level that rarely makes headlines or appears in official statistics. The consequences resonate beyond any immediate policy debate. Quietly, over years, these networks help shape the fabric of city life, the tone of public argument, and the conditions for legislative and electoral decisions. Every new regulatory response triggers tactical adaptation. Proposals for charity law reform or stricter foreign funding disclosure regimes knock against guarantees of minority rights and fears of radicalizing marginalized groups. Civil society watchdogs push for greater transparency, even as governments are wary of stoking social tension. International bodies, including the Financial Action Task Force and the Council of Europe, launch task forces, but information sharing is piecemeal and jurisdictionally fragmented. In this context, the Iranian parallel system persists, sometimes in open view, sometimes as a shadow circuit beneath the legal order. The central question is not simply about the specifics of Iranian national policy or even about the future of Europe's religious pluralism. Rather, it is about the dilemma for democratic, pluralistic societies when foreign influence is calibrated to operate under the cover of the familiar. When soft power is embedded in public ritual, social services, or even street-level charity. The ambiguous landscape of ally and adversary, of faith and politics, now traces itself through community signs, rented storefronts, and the fine print of non-profit registration. Parliamentary chambers are replicated virtually, the votes tallied in community meetings and electoral turnouts. Over time, the results are visible not in dramatic exposures, but in the slow, disciplined inscription of outside priorities into the DNA of urban life, writing the future of Europe, quietly, one transaction and one community, gathering at a time.